One of the biggest, most interesting questions in language learning is whether or not an adult can learn a language to the same level as a native speaker. Another interesting kind of side question is, what even is a native speaker really? And I'll get into that a little bit. Can someone in their 20s begin to learn a language, or later begin to learn a language and eventually be indistinguishable from a native speaker? People will tell you it's not technically possible. A lot of people argue about it on Reddit. People will say you can get very close, but it will take you a very long time and you'll have to devote your whole life to it. I'm not sure that's true. I'm actually, as rare as it is, it's very rare, I'm actually optimistic about it. A person can be indistinguishable from a native speaker, a person who learns a language as an adult. The question is, for how long? So Charlize Theron is, I think, one of the best examples. She's an extremely famous actor everyone has seen. I did not know that she was not a native speaker. I didn't know. I've seen her movies. Never have I thought, where is she from? Not once. I always thought she was American. She's from South Africa. She did not start learning English until she was 19. But here's the thing. This is my theory. And Charlize Theron is a perfect example of this. She didn't just start picking up English casually because she moved here, as she got into acting, as she went along, like, oh yeah, I'll get there. No. She, at the age of 19, she moved to America. She decided to become an actress in Hollywood. And she was told, if you don't lose the accent, no one's gonna give you work. You're not gonna get work. So she decided, I'm gonna be one of the most famous actors that ever lived. I'm gonna be wildly successful, and I'm going to have a perfect American accent at 19 years old. That's what she decided, and that's what she did. So every minute of every single day, she listened to English and she tried to repeat it, and she tried to sound exactly like what she was hearing on TV and in movies from Hollywood. And she devoted every single second of every single day to it until she could do it. And that might sound extreme, but she did it from the beginning. This is the real thing. It's not so much about how old you are. It's about how long have you been saying these words with your accent. Because most of my clients are fluent in English. But most of the words that we practice, most of the words they struggle with are the easy words that they learned 20 years ago. So instead of getting it right at the beginning, they kept their accent from Russian or from Spanish or what have you, and they kept saying these words, these basic words they learned even as children, but when they first started learning English, they learned them wrong. And now they've been saying them for 10 to 20 to 30. They've been saying them for many, many years that way. They've said the word the. They've said the. And they've done it a million times. So Charlize Theron never said any English words with a South African accent a million times. She made sure at the beginning to get it right, to get it perfect. And she was obsessed. So no, it doesn't take your whole life. But if you have had a strong accent, if you never really tried, if people told you you'll never lose the accent, don't worry about it, it's fine. And they told you speak from the beginning, speak, don't worry about the accent. And you never really tried to sound like an American or British or whatever you want. You never really tried, and now you've been speaking English for decades, and you've decided, no, I want to lose the accent, I want to sound American now. Yeah, it's probably going to take a lot longer than it took her, because now you have to rework all of that. You have to change your habits. And also, some people have an ear. Some people are particularly good at hearing sounds people who were raised as musicians, people who were raised around an international area where they heard a lot of accents, or maybe they even imitated a lot of accents as children. Also, some people just, if they've done some kind of similar work, acting, actors have to work really closely with memorizing words and tones and trying to really focus on how it sounds, that kind of work, work in radio or politics, memorizing speeches, newscasters. These people who really make it their work, like they not only devote the time that it takes or somehow find the way to do that, but they also develop this skill. Not just the skill of speaking English, but the skill of being able to learn and being able to absorb new sounds and repeat them. Pretty much anyone has a pretty good chance if they really are willing to put in the work, but it's so much easier if you do it from the beginning. If you really don't speak much, do a lot of listening, and if you do speak, do it with a native speaker or audio recordings of a native speaker, and make sure you're really repeating the exact sounds. Don't force yourself to speak when you can't hear whether it sounds right yet. If you really want to have a perfect accent. The other question is, for how long can you sound like a native speaker? So maybe if I ended up marrying Charlize Theron, if I moved in with Charlize Theron and spent every day with her for years and years, maybe I would eventually notice, like, she kind of said that funny. Maybe after like hundreds or thousands of hours, every once in a while, maybe she'll say something kind of funny. And that's, I think, often the case with people who are not native speakers. They can practice a speech, deliver it, no one knows that they weren't a native speaker. But then after, if you hang out with them for a few hours, they might say one word a little strange, or they might use a collocation, like put two words, like say jelly and peanut butter instead of peanut butter and jelly. You might go, that was a little strange. But you might not think about it. You might not notice unless someone told you, they're not a native speaker. Then you might start to notice, oh yeah, they do kind of speak funny. But that's the thing about native speaker. What does it really mean? Because I've met people whose parents were not native speakers of English, but they themselves grew up speaking English. If you grow up in America speaking English in school, you're a native speaker, but you can often still tell that their parents influenced their English. So they still have a little bit of an accent, or sometimes they still make grammatical choices that are a little strange to me, because both of my parents were native speakers. But that doesn't mean that they're not native speakers, right? And there are other people who spoke a language for the first 10 years of their life, and then they moved to America many years later. They've kind of forgotten it, or they're like embarrassed to speak it, which is crazy to me. Like, it's not like they've completely forgotten it, but it doesn't feel natural to them, and their English is like perfect. So are they a native Spanish speaker or a native English speaker? Because their English is not better than their Spanish. Stronger, more dominant. So yeah, it's really difficult to define what a native speaker even is. And of course, anyone can get to that level. It's just a matter of, are you willing to take the time to choose to do it? Some people really would benefit from having a language coach. This is how most of these actors do it. I'm sure later on, when she had some success, she had world-class accent coaches training her, because now her English is like basically perfect. So that's the question. Most people don't have access to that kind of coaching, or if they want to improve their accent, they're told you'll never sound like a native speaker, and so they never even try. They go on Preply or whatever, italki. They get someone to help them with English, and I've heard this from some of my clients. Almost all of those teachers say, "Don't worry about your accent," or I'm only going to correct you when it's like really important. Something that like, oh, you probably don't want to mess that up. I will correct every single sound, every single thing. I will make you sound exactly like me. And we will sit there and do the same sound or combination of sounds until you sound exactly like me, if that's what you want. So that's what I do. And if you can't do that on your own, which it's very hard to do that on your own, you should practice on your own, but it can be very helpful to have someone help you with it as well, right? Because my ear is obviously a little more tuned to the American accent than a foreigner's might be, right? Obviously. So it can be very helpful to have someone once a week, twice a week. But also you need to spend a lot of time listening, and trying, making the effort. Most people who study English, who study a foreign language, they never actually try to make their accent perfect. They're just told that they can't. So they never really do it. Or they put it off. They're like, yeah, I'll do that. Eventually it'll get to me. No, it won't eventually happen, because now that you're used to pronouncing a word with an accent, with your accent, your foreign accent, you're going to lose the ability to even notice that you're saying it wrong. This is what happened to me, like with Spanish. I've used this example in other videos. For years, I would say significa, because it sounds like significant in English, but it's significa. The emphasis is on the penultimate syllable, significa. And I didn't notice that because I had said it so many times wrong. It sounded natural to me. So I didn't even notice the way people were saying the word around me. Eventually, I was studying the rules of pronunciation and in Spanish, and I realized, wait, why doesn't this word have an accent over? Oh my God. And now I was conscious of it and I could hear it. So once a coach makes you conscious of a sound, it's like wow, now I can hear everyone doing that sound. Wow, that's so weird, I didn't notice. So if you actually choose to, and it's really important to you for your career, or for whatever reason, if you're really motivated enough and you actually just make the decision, which almost no one really does, to use an accent coach and to really try to perfect your accent and your grammar, you will eventually sound exactly like a native speaker, even if you're beginning to learn English as an adult. And one final point, I don't know if you can hear the music in the background, but it's Saturday night and I'm in Mexico. Although I think they're listening to Colombian. It's also a cultural, psychological thing. Like, some people are more comfortable taking on an accent. Some people feel a psychological block. They feel ridiculous trying to sound exactly like foreigner. They might even feel guilty, or that people might even tell them that, like, are you making fun of them? Why are you trying to sound like them? It might have been easier for Charlize Theron because South Africa, I mean, that language, Afrikaans, is not the same as English. It's not mutually intelligible, but it's similar. And so maybe she felt culturally like she could blend in, like no one would really think it was weird that she was trying to sound like an American. Also, America is such a culture that is popular around the world. America's main product that it sells to the world is culture. So people don't feel weird sort of appropriating, it's kind of a negative word usually, but sort of taking on American culture. It's sort of like free for everyone. Like, you can hear American cultural influence in music in most countries now. I mean, not most, but like all over the world, you'll see American culture. You'll feel it. You'll hear it in the music. But Americans aren't necessarily used to doing that. And a lot of people might not be used to doing it, even learning English. So like for me earlier, I went to a store and I was trying to get the attention of, it was like a store here in Mexico where people live in the home and they just have like a little window where they sell things. So there's a lot of that here. It's kind of like a family lives there and they have a little storefront, just snacks and drinks. And they have a little camera and they try to watch to make sure they catch people if they come, so they can sell you something. But they don't always see you on the camera, so you have to do the classic Tabasco thing where people, and I've heard people do it a million times, so I know how you do it. You have to go up and you go, you don't say buenas, you go buenas, buenas. It's like this call that they do here. Buenas. I don't know if it exists in like other parts of Mexico, but it's like how you get attention in the day from like when you're trying to come on, come out. I'm trying to get something, or I got to tell you something. But like I heard myself do it, and I kind of resisted a little, because I'm like, oh, this is such a Choco thing. This is such a how do you even say this word in English? Tabascan? Such a Tabasqueño thing. I'm like, why not? So I couldn't let myself do it like sound just like that, like too Choco. So the other thing is like I have not put in the kind of work. I would like my Spanish to sound perfect, and I do work on it, but I haven't like really dialed it in. And I didn't from the beginning. So I'm also guilty of the same things. I have a lot of bad habits. Um, but also I have to decide what dialect I want to sound like. We all have to choose. Like, do you want to sound like Hollywood American? Do you want to sound like New York? Mixing it can sound weird, but sometimes native speakers also have a mixture of accents. It's just a little odd when it's like partly British, partly American. But there are native speakers who have half British, half American accent. It happens. Or like one of my favorite people to listen to was Alan Watts. The late Alan Watts is British, but his British, he was in America for so long that his British accent was a little bit soft. It was like the American sound kind of like softened it up a little bit. So like I often want to sound like a sort of neutral Spanish, like the type of Spanish you hear, like general Central American or Latin American Spanish, the type of Spanish you hear if you put on the dubbing, Spanish dubbing. Usually you can't quite pin down where they're from, basically. And it's like they'll use words and they'll pronounce them in a way that most people from any Spanish-speaking region will understand. So that's kind of how I want to sound. So sometimes it's a little embarrassing to try and sound exactly like someone from like right here in Villahermosa. But it's also like the sound you gotta make to get the Coca-Cola like right there. So I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with like perfectly imitating, but it can be embarrassing. So some people have a more, I think there have been studies on this. Some people have more of a psychological barrier to that. Like, oh, I sound so ridiculous. I'll just keep my accent. That's silly. They don't like impersonating. They don't like imitating. It feels weird to them. It feels like fake. Other people, no problem at all. They're like chameleons. They're like, oh, this is great. Now, no, I'm American now. That's just who I like. They're willing to, and a lot of times actors are good at that because they're so good at playing characters. They're so good at forgetting who they are and I'm just gonna go with this and be someone else and let's play pretend. I think that psychological ability or decision or not necessarily decision or ability, I don't know, that psychological nature is part of also what makes actors really good. It gives them another edge other than just the ability to memorize words or focus on sounds. It gives them an edge that they can psychologically allow themselves to believe that no, I'm an American now, or whatever. I'm a Spanish speaker now. So there's also that. Like if you can work on that, like don't worry about what people are gonna think. You know, that's always an issue. I have a friend who he made a comment like, and he used a Spanish word as a joke. And my friend doesn't really speak Spanish. He knows a little Spanish. But someone was hating. They're doing the hate. They're like, oh my God, you didn't use that word right. What are you doing? He's just using a little Spanish, you know? Like, it's the same thing that a lot of times people say Americans will do. They'll make fun of people for trying to speak English. Like, there's people who criticize people for trying to speak another language are not worth your time. It doesn't, letting their opinions affect how you feel is a real waste of time. It's a huge waste of energy. Don't worry about that at all.